Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Little chilly this morning. That storm that blew through yesterday brought a bit of coolness to us, but I don't think it's gonna last very long. It'll be warming up again soon enough. So the last week or so ago, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I lose track of time. Getting old that way, you know. Talking to some friends, and we were discussing how we thought it would be that they, you know, the theys that I'm talking about, fill in the blank, would fully implement their evil, diabolical plan. You know, the digital IDs and the CBDCs and the 15-minute cities and the quarantines and all of this stuff. Because, I mean, it's all part of their plan. You can read any of the literature from the United Nations Agenda 2030 plan, the Great Reset plan of the World Economic Forum. They're all pretty much the same stuff. And they lay out what they want. And it's evil, okay? You know that. I know that. But the question is are we going to see this just incrementally? Or is there going to be something, because it almost seems like that there would have to be something that would be the thing that pushes us, that they're able to push us and justify it, because the masses would accept it, because there's so much fear of whatever the thing is that's happening, that people would accept it. A lot of us thought it was this last, pandemic thing. At least some people thought that. I still feel that was a big old beta test. That was just a kind of testing the waters to see how well things would work, what would work and what wouldn't work. And others have wondered, is it going to be World War III with China, or a complete economic collapse? And I stand by what I've said probably 3 years ago or so, when this last thing went around, that I think the perfect thing to cause their plans to be implemented is a pandemic. I just look at what we went through, and it was a pretty light thing. I mean, they could have done a lot worse. Look at what went on in Australia. That could have happened here. I still think that's quite possibly the thing that they use to push us over the edge. And there's totally a lot of indication that there's still another one yet to come. In fact, folks like Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci and stuff, they talk about that all the time. That, just wait for the next one. There's another one coming, and it'll be here soon. All this kind of stuff. Well, I wanted to talk about that just briefly, because there's a couple that are out there kind of building strength, and it makes you wonder if one of them is the next one. And if either one of them are, I would say it's going to be a lot worse than this last pandemic. I'm speaking of the H5N1 bird flu, and then, of course, the Marburg virus. Both of those started in other countries, and they are making their ways to our shores. Now, of course, we don't know how much manipulation has been done in a laboratory. So, for right now, while most of us would agree that that's probably happening, it's really just speculation. So I'm going to table that for the sake of this video. But the CDC has issued a warning for Americans on the Marburg virus, that it could happen. There was another death the other day in another country, but they have issued a warning for that one. And that one, that's a nasty one. It doesn't seem to spread real fast, but it seems to be very deadly. The other one that my personal opinion is would be more likely the candidate of being the one is this H5N1. There have been a few deaths from it overseas. It seems down in Chile, it's becoming a pretty big thing. There's been a few thousand, several thousand animals, seals, and even dolphins, and a few others. And of course, it started off with birds. That's all these tens of millions of birds that were killed off. And then now we're starting to see it transmit into to mammals. Now, I want to point out something that's a little interesting. And I've been talking about this every week, just about, that there are more and more mammals here in North America that's testing positive. They're finding them dead, and they test them, and they find out it's the H5N1. Last that I checked, there have been 6 domesticated house cats that have it, which means that it's now in animals that are closer to humans. And the state of Montana this week issued a warning to all of its people to, if you see a dead bird or a bird that appears to be ill, to leave it alone, do not touch it, because Montana has been getting kind of a lot of these cases in wildlife. Grizzly bears, mountain lions, skunks, all kinds of stuff. Now, one might speculate and ask the question, but it seems a little bit strange that Montana is getting a lot of these, and that just happens to be the state that Chinese spy balloon liked to spend a lot of time over a few months back. Now, I'm not making accusations. It's just speculation, a question. Wonder if there's any connection there. Or is it just a big coincidence? Because we know how coincidences work. This is something that we still must plan for. I suspect, I could be completely wrong, that the next one that comes around, whether it's the H5N1, the H3N8, or whatever that one is, or the Marburg, or something totally different that it's not even on our radar. I suspect it would be different than this last one we all lived through, in the sense that it would actually be very deadly. Because at some point, number one, that has to happen. And if you look back over how this last one played out, they hyped it up. And of course, as we all know, it wasn't the big Spanish flu, Black Death kind of thing. It wasn't, wasn't too bad. In fact, probably wouldn't have been nearly as high casualty rate if people had just used some common sense. But anyways, I think that was part of the conditioning to get us softened up. And then, of course, now looking back, people are like, you know what? There was a whole lot of hype over nothing. It wasn't nearly as bad. And so when the next one comes around, a lot of people are probably going to be conditioned to think that this isn't going to be a big deal either, whatever. And they'll just kind of do their thing. And then when lots and lots and lots of people start actually falling over dead, then there'll be this massive panic. People will beg government to implement very strict measures to control the population. And then that's where all of these very restrictive things will come into play, because I suspect they want to do it in a way that people are begging for it, and not that it's being forced down their throat, or at least enough of the majority. And I say that because I've only said this probably a few hundred times on here. Going back to an interview right after Joe Biden took office, it was an interview with one of his staff members asking if at that time, and remember that was at the heat of the whole pandemic, if Americans would see lockdown measures similar to Australia at that time. which was pretty intense. And they said that they were waiting things out so that people here in America, that there would be enough. No, not everyone, but there would be enough, whatever their threshold number is, that would want it, that would basically be begging for it so that they could implement it. Now, I think that's because they know that they are greatly outnumbered, and if they heat things up on us too quickly, the cattle will stampede and the farmer will get crushed. So they want to do it in a way that the cattle are begging for it. And so I think it's very likely, I don't have a timeline, this year, next year, the year after that. I can't imagine it going much further than that over the next 24 months, that we could very likely see another big disease start to spread around and start doing a lot of damage, and then they will start using that and using the fear of that to implement their plan. Now think about it. What everyone has just lived through over the last 3 years, and there's still a lot of people that are terrified. I mean, there's still people wearing masks and stuff. But imagine if something like that happened again, and it did happen in the way that it was, the fear was spread around that, people are falling over dead, and thousands of people everywhere, millions of people are dying of it. Hospitals are really literally overflowing with people. Can you imagine the level of panic that would ensue here in the United States and really abroad if something like that happened? It would be absolutely massive. And so I think it's likely, not guarantee it, I'm just saying I think it's likely that their evil, diabolical, taking over the world plans probably will be implemented in some way like that. And that's when we'll start to see people begging for CBDC. Right now you've got people pushing against it. You've even got states trying to pass laws to prevent it. And then all of a sudden when this happens, you remember one of the first things I remember talked about in the last pandemic was how dirty money was, like cash, how it could transmit this around to everyone. Oh, they'll be spinning that again, and people will be begging to get rid of this paper currency. Give me something that doesn't get me sick. And you'll have that. You'll absolutely have to know who's had the thing and who hasn't. And so there'll be some kind of digital identification. And then it'll get bad enough that people will have to be quarantined into their neighborhoods. And you'll start seeing a bigger push for things like 15-minute cities and quarantine areas. And it'll just kind of go downhill from there. Now, I realize that everything that I've said is a big speculation. But I don't think we're too far from hitting the mark on this, because we've already seen it happen in a lighter way, in a way that's just kind of testing the waters. I do think it's strange that it's building up in areas, especially areas where the spy balloon flew around at. It's building up in general around the country, and we're starting to see more and more cases almost daily. There's a few websites that are tracking it, and almost daily now, whereas a few weeks ago it was just every once in a while, we're seeing positive cases in animals. And so at some point, it could either naturally or being manipulated make a easy jump into humans and then start spreading around. Probably will happen before the next election. And who knows? There may not be another election. Oh, we've heard that before, haven't we? Well, maybe this time it'll be the thing. This is why you prepare, why you become self-sufficient, why you get your life to a place that you're not dependent upon the system. We've all gone through this drill before. Don't be like most Americans and have a short memory. Don't forget what it was like and what happened, and just expect it to be amplified and much worse. And then plan accordingly. And part of that's probably moving to areas that aren't reacting quite as bad. But I suspect if it's a big one that every area will react badly. You need to be getting your houses in order, folks. I think something like this is definitely on the horizon. Get yourselves prepared mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.